This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what an attack! Whoa, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
It's a Friday, Football Friday here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig, glad to have you on board the show. The PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open for you at 609-403-0973. We got a jam-packed one-hour show tonight. Of course, don't forget, coming up later tonight, 8 o'clock coverage of Celtics and Heat tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Miami with the 3-1 series lead. You could hear the action if the Heat punch their ticket to the NBA Finals or if the Celtics extend the series. You hear all the action coming at 8 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, it's a busy football weekend. College football, huge slate tomorrow. We got college football weekend picks for you coming up. Of course, don't forget, no Sports Bash Saturday tomorrow. Ole Miss versus Florida at noon tomorrow right here on 97.3 ESPN. So I'll give you all my football picks today. That's coming up just about 18 minutes from now. 6:40 tonight. You don't want to miss out. Mike Clay, ESPN NFL Insider. The majority of his work is behind that ESPN Plus paywall. But you can get some of those insights right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN coming up right around 6:40 tonight. Eagles news came out earlier. If you didn't see it, all the facts and information is right up at 97.3 ESPN.com. Some of those facts and information includes with the Philadelphia Eagles, Alshon Jeffrey will not play this week. Now, it's not the end of the world, though, okay? It's not the end of the world. Don't overthink it. Don't read too much into it. He's only practiced for 2 days since injuring that foot. Doug Peterson told the media today. He said, "We're excited. We've got a bit of time. I don't want to push him." He says, "I'm optimistic moving forward in the next couple of weeks." That is what Doug said to the media today. Check out the full quote and information what Doug said over at 97.3 ESPN.com, our Eagles injury report. Furthermore, only one player listed as questionable. That is Fletcher Cox. The good news is he's questionable. He was limited at practice. So he was not a DNP. He was not somebody who didn't practice at all. So there is a little bit of good news there with Fletcher Cox, although if you listened to the Sports Bash a little bit earlier, it's not like the Bengals have a vaunted offensive line standing in between the Eagles' defense and Joe Burrow. Let's not forget, you do have two guys who the Eagles paid a lot of money to the last two offseasons to sit next to Fletcher Cox. That's Malik Jackson and Javon Hargrave. You didn't make those big acquisitions for nothing, right? Remember, the Eagles have a history of wanting to have depth at the interior defensive line. They've invested a lot of money and a lot of resources, draft picks, contracts, trades, offseason acquisitions in that defensive line. So even if Fletcher is not out there, you do have other guys who can step up. And don't forget, Malik Jackson and Javon Hargrave combined have 47 sacks in their career. So you still can get a defensive pressure with those two guys on the interior of that line. Eagles football this Sunday. Coverage begins at 10 a.m. The Locker Room with Billy Schwein, followed by Merrill Reese and Mike Quick on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN. Triple header of football action coming up this Sunday. And to me, I'll give you my pick for the Eagles game a little bit later this hour, but I'm letting you know right now, it's not that the Bengals scare me, but what the Bengals can do does have similarities to the Rams. I don't think it's a coincidence the couple times that it was brought up on the Sports Bash that Zach Taylor comes from that Sean McVay tree. I don't think it's something that we have to overlook. I think it's something you have to focus on. Someone like Zach Taylor, coming from that Sean McVay background, Zach Taylor understanding the Kyle Shanahan concepts. This is now going to be 3 straight weeks. The Eagles have to deal with similar type of offenses. Last week was the Rams. This week is The Bengals next week, I know the 49ers are beat up and banged up and they're completely busted up left and right, but the offensive play caller is still there. It's still Kyle Shanahan. And what do all three of these guys have in common? They all love to do two things. One, they love misdirection. Misdirection is a huge piece of that type of offense. Remember, the Doug Peterson comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree, and Andy Reid comes from the West Coast offense lineage of Bill Walsh. But Andy Reid has a different variation of the Bill Walsh offense. Well, there's two basic variations of the West Coast offense. It's the Mike Holmgren, Andy Reid people, and then it's the Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan descendants in their coaching tree. And the big part that is different between what Peterson and Shanahan like to call is that while Peterson loves to get, the snap count, he loves to get as many opportunities as possible to score. He's a big guy in believing in you use the pass to set up the run. That was something that Andy Reid did for a long time. Kyle Shanahan, the big thing with the Shanahan offense is they use misdirection to set up the run in the pass. And we saw it again and again with the Eagles versus the Rams. You saw it. The run game was used as a part of a larger manipulation of the Eagles defense. Tyler Higbee didn't get 3 touchdowns because he's the best tight end in the NFL. He's a good tight end, but he's definitely not on the level of Kittle and Ertz and Travis Kelce and all those guys. He's not. He's not Waller out there with the Raiders. But he's a very good pass receiver in terms of running routes, in terms of understanding where he has to go, in the terms of the offensive run scheme. And he understands what it means to fake the run, go for the pass. He understands what it means to go one direction when the rest of the offense is going a different direction. The Rams are a high-level functioning unit. Now, you're not going to see that type of high function with the Bengals, but you're going to see similar variations, right? You're going to see the misdirection. You're going to see them use the running back as a way to manipulate the defense in certain ways in order when they do go the pass that they can use those openings that were manipulated from the previous plays. They're going to use situations where Burrow can go through his progressions. You saw it versus the Browns. Joe Burrow can go through his progression. So the point of me saying all this is understand that the challenge for the Eagles is very similar this week as it was last week. The hope is that they learn from their mistakes. The hope is, as Jim Schwartz said, we have a history of dealing with adversity, right? The Eagles have a history of working through these problems. So can they capitalize on that history? Brandon Graham said how much it meant to them that Jim Schwartz took the bullets. He said, I thought we were going to get cussed out, but instead Jim takes the bullets for us. Now we want to, him and Darius Slay said, now we want to play even harder. We want to play even better because we know this guy, stood up for us. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles historically. The Eagles defense, when it has allowed this many points in the past, when the Eagles defense has been thrashed in the past, remember the Dolphins game, remember the Saints game, remember the Chiefs game the last few years. The Eagles are allowing under 20 points per game in the games after that game. If they can replicate that type of response, if they can build on their mistakes, if they can make the foundation of this defense not being manipulated again and again, if they can get after the quarterback, okay, this is a defense that in the past has averaged over a turnover per game under Jim Schwartz. Outside of the last 2 games, they have 1 turnover in the 2 games combined. But from 2016 to 2019, they averaged about 1.5 turnovers per game. If they can get Joe Burrow off his spot, if they can get him to turn the ball over a little bit, if they can get to the quarterback, this team has a chance to win. To me, the biggest thing about this game is, can the defense get the job done? They were put in a very bad situation in game one. Because of the Carson Wentz turnovers, Washington had a short field multiple times. In game two, they were completely outplayed, out-game planned, manipulated, and they suffered, and we all had to suffer watching it. So now in this game, the biggest thing to me is not about the offense, because I think the offense will figure it out. I think Doug Peterson is still a Super Bowl winning head coach. I don't think he's a fluke, a flash in the pan. I don't think you go to the playoffs the last 2 years with the dearth of talent that you had after all those injuries if you're a bum head coach, okay? This is not Brian Billick with the Ravens. This is not John Gruden with the Bucs. I think Doug Peterson is a legitimate, very good NFL head coach. And with the coaching staff that he has, Rich Scangarello and Marty Morningweg, Jim Schwartz has a lot of experienced guys like Muhammad Massaquoi, guys like him in that defensive coaching room. I think the coaching staff can turn this team around. But the key to me is not going to be the offense, because I think the offense will eventually come around anyway. There's just too much talent. To me, the key is the defense. If the defense, as Jim Schwartz said, can respond to adversity, those were his words. He said, quote, "We have to get back to being us. The area more high alert is for our response to adversity," unquote. That was Jim Schwartz. And we talked about this a couple days ago. Jim Schwartz took the bullets. If Brandon Graham and Darius Slay are serious, we should see a better defensive effort on Sunday, and then the offense will find a way to come around. To me, those are the keys, because if the defense can respond to the adversity, they can stop being manipulated by the misdirection, they can get back on their P's and Q's, they can focus on what they need to focus on. If Jim Schwartz genuinely is simplifying the defense, and then on the flip side, if Doug Peterson is getting back to basics on the offense, this team can beat the Bengals this Sunday. And you can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. Is a triple header of NFL coverage this Sunday. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick on the call, starting at 1 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. Following the Eagles game, Cowboys, Seahawks. It's going to be a shootout. I'm telling you right now. Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, those offenses going blow for blow. It's going to be a fun game. And then don't forget, Sunday night football. You thought last week's game was interesting? How about Green Bay versus the Saints? How about Rodgers versus Breeze? Does Breeze have anything left in the tank? Aaron Rodgers is on fire. This is in New Orleans, but it's not the same New Orleans. There's no gazillion fans there screaming at the top of their lungs. They can only have the decibel sound that very loud in a dome. That's the NFL rules. So Rodgers is not going to have to deal with the crowd noise. Can the Saints get a win at home versus Rodgers? You can find out right here on 97.3 ESPN. That's our Sunday night football game. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. Place your legal sports bets at PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now and they'll match your first deposit up to $250. Must be 21 in order to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. PlaySugarHouse.com text board. It's open, 609-403-0973. Still to come at 6:40 tonight, Mike Clay, ESPN NFL Insider. But coming up next, we'll get into the weekend slate of football. We got college football Saturday. We have NFL football Sunday. I'll give you my thoughts on all the NFL games, and you can chime in, as I mentioned, 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig, Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Mike Clay, NFL Insider. Catch him on the ESPN Plus on the paywall side. We'll be bringing some of his insights for free to you coming up at 6:40 tonight. Also tonight, about 15 minutes from now, I'll give you my pick for the Eagles game versus the Bengals. Eagles-Bengals this Sunday here on 97.3 ESPN. It's a wonderful football weekend. I mean, it's just nuts. Can't forget about the NBA. 5 million people were watching that Heat-Celtics game the other night. Well, the Heat have a chance to go back to the finals for the first time in their franchise history without Dwayne Wade on the roster. Think about that. Every time the Miami Heat were in the NBA Finals, Dwayne Wade was on the roster. Him and Shaq the first time, and then him and LeBron for a few years. Before that, Alonzo Mourning, Tim Hardaway, they got close, but they never actually got to the NBA Finals. Jimmy Butler could have the distinction of being the man to lead the Heat to the finals for the first time without the franchise's best player. And you hear the action tonight on 97.3 ESPN. I said it when the series started. My head was saying Celtics. I was so convinced logically that it was going to be the Celtics. But my heart was always saying I wanted the Heat because, it's a sentimental thing. I'm a Jimmy Butler guy. I wanted to see what happens. I love to see Jimmy Butler get to the finals. I don't think he's actually going to win, but I would love to see what happens when Jimmy Butler's on the biggest stage in front of everybody else. Does the Jimmy Butler-esque attitude work in an NBA Finals environment? I'm curious. I want to know. So my head says Celtics will win this game tonight. My heart says I want to see Jimmy Butler in the Heat and Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley with his 10 rings make it to the NBA Finals. I want to see it. I know Pat Riley doesn't actually have 10 rings, but it just sounded nice coming out of my mouth there. So, NBA action tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. Tomorrow night we'll have Lakers-Nuggets Game 5. Lakers have a chance to seal it up. We could have the NBA Finals all locked up by the end of the weekend. By the way, tomorrow's an incredible sports weekend. And that's what we're going to get into here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. You have the Phillies pitching this weekend down in Tampa, trying to get to the playoffs. They got to get these wins down in Tampa. Tampa's a very good team. Tampa's fighting for seeding right now. They already have the AL East locked up, but they are fighting for seeding, so they're not going to go laying down. And the Phillies, Velasquez tonight, and then they got Wheeler and Nola this weekend. So a big weekend for the Phillies. Also tomorrow, huge slate of college football. We'll get to that in just a minute. Plus, UFC tomorrow night. Two incredibly massive, huge fights tomorrow night. Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa for the UFC middleweight championship. And then the vacant light heavyweight championship. John Jones vacated the belt. He's going to heavyweight. So Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz, two incredible fighters. These are incredible fights tomorrow night. I'm not on tomorrow for Sports Bash Saturday. So I'm going to tell you what direction I'm going in for these fights tomorrow, right here, right now. And then I'll give you my football picks and my pick for the Eagles game, what I think is going to happen this weekend. So really quick on the UFC fights. Israel Adesanya is an incredible fighter. And he is stylistically one of the most fun fighters to fight to watch fight in all of MMA. But one of the problems with Adesanya is that when he fights somebody who has a style that can stymie and stifle him, he's not able to finish them. He has an incredible track record of just wrecking people, right? The guy, 14 of his 19 wins are by knockout. Incredible, right? Just absolute positive monster. He's defended the belt now. He unified it 2 fights ago. But if you look back on his recent fights, he couldn't finish Gastelum. He couldn't finish Yoel Romero. They were two thick, strong, tough fighters. He couldn't finish his idol, Anderson Silva. Why? Because Anderson Silva was basically seeing himself in the mirror. Now he's fighting another thick, tough, strong monster, and Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa is hands down the most dangerous fighter Adesanya has ever fought. Both of these fighters are undefeated going into tomorrow night. If you want to try to make some money tomorrow night, and I remember I gave you the pick last week. I told you, Kobe Covington, finish. He can finish the fight. That's where the money is. The odds and the value tomorrow is very interesting. The straight up money line, Adesanya is minus 186, Costa is plus 151 on the line. But the better value than going Costa is for this fight to go the distance. Costa has never fought someone as elusive as Adesanya before. Listen, you look at the highlight reel, Costa's got a lot of power knockouts too, right? Destroyed Uriah Hall, crushed Johnny Hendricks, the former welterweight champion, right? He's had some incredible performances, but his last fight, Yoel Romero, he went the distance. Couldn't finish him. Yoel Romero fought Adesanya. It went the distance. This fight is plus 175 to go the distance. It's a lot better than going straight up Costa on the betting line. So that's my little advice for you there. You're not picking who's going to win. You're just saying the fight's going to go the distance. You throw $20 on that, you're going to get 55 back. A little UFC pick for you. All right. Let's get to some football picks, football preview. I mean, what an incredible weekend. I am so excited about college football being back full slate tomorrow. You hear the coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN starting at 12 p.m. Ole Miss versus Florida, and that's where we're going to start on the football picks. Picks so far this year, 14-7. Not too bad. Not too bad. We got a winning record. We got some wins last week. I was sweating that Navy game. I told you I completely failed you on the Oklahoma State-Tulsa's game. That was an embarrassing game. In fact, it was so embarrassing, I'm staying away from OK State. I want to pick West Virginia on the spread because I think that Oklahoma State's got a lot of problems after watching that game last week. But I couldn't muster to put it in the picks here. Now, will it come back to bite me? I had the same problem last week. Remember, I couldn't muster the energy to pick BC last week on the spread versus Duke. Well, that was a bad job by me. So we're going to try to do better this week. I mentioned Florida Ole Miss. This is the debut of Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. The mad scientist of college football offenses is averaging 33 points per game in his season openers in the previous 8 seasons as a head coach. So that's Tennessee, USC, and Florida Atlantic. He gets a lot of points. That first game, Lane Kiffin has something in his back pocket. Even the games he loses. Remember, we talked about this last year here on 97.3 ESPN. I told you all, week 1, Florida Atlantic had to play Ohio State. I told you to take them on the spread, and they covered. And you remember why? Because Lane Kiffin always has something in his back pocket. Sure, they lost 45 to 21, I think it was. Well, they still covered. So why on earth is Ole Miss a plus 13.5 at home? It's because they're playing Florida. Florida and Ole Miss, neither one of them have played this year. The book, I think, is making a mistake. It's an opportunity to take advantage of a mistake. Attendance at the Ole Miss game, that's Vaught Hemingway Stadium. They're going to have about 16,000 people there, capped at 25% due to COVID protocols. Ole Miss at home, plus 13.5. I think Lane Kiffin's got something in his back pocket for Florida. I know Florida's one of the favorites in the SEC East this year, but Florida, they haven't seen a Lane Kiffin offense yet. And we haven't seen a Lane Kiffin offense in the SEC since he was the OC for Alabama. Remember, that worked out pretty good for the Rolling Tide. Another game on the docket tomorrow, Kansas State at Oklahoma. Kansas State's defense, remember, completely just failed at life in their first game. They allowed 35 points and 489 total yards in their loss to Arkansas State. Last season, K-State beat Oklahoma 48-41 in a game where the Wildcats and Sooners combined for 923 total yards. I'm saying take the over. 60 and a half is the over-under. I'm saying take that over, run with it, because it's not like Oklahoma has a great defense, and it's not like Kansas State can stop anybody. So why not? Go the over. Let's go back to the SEC. Mississippi State at LSU. Another new head coach returning to the SEC. Lane Kiffin isn't the only guy making an SEC homecoming. How about Mike Leach? You might not remember this, but Mike Leach was the offense coordinator at Kentucky for a couple of years with Hal Mumme and that air raid offense before he went and became the head coach at Texas Tech. Well, during Leach's time in the SEC, those 2 years with Kentucky, where he was the offense coordinator, they averaged 33.75 points per game. Both seasons, they were top 25 in the nation. They were 25th in the nation, and then they were 11th in the nation in scoring when he was OC in the SEC. Remember, it was Hal Mumme and Mike Leach that got Tim Couch to the number 1 overall pick. Who broke all of Tim Couch's records? That would be Joe Burrow. Oh, it's all coming full circle. Funny you mentioned that. LSU at home. They lost 14 guys to the NFL draft, and then they lost their best wide receiver and defensive tackle. They opted out of the year. So you have LSU as a plus 16.5 favorite at home, and Mississippi State is a dog? What? Listen, during Mike Leach's time at Washington State, this is according to The Athletic, they had only 6 4-star recruits during his entire time. This is arguably the most talent that Mike Leach has ever had on a team in his head coaching career. According to The Athletic, Ari Wasserman, Mississippi State is the 24th most talented roster in all of college football. So Mike Leach comes back to the SEC. He knows how to score points. He has the 24th best talent roster in all of FBS college football. He was winning games with guys like Gardner Minshew at Washington State with inferior talent compared to what he has now. Give me Mississippi State plus 16.5 at LSU. Also on the college football slate tomorrow, Army plus 14 at Cincinnati. Let's be realistic. Cincinnati, I think they're overrated. They allowed 353 total yards to a miserable Austin Peay squad last week in their win. Yeah, they won 55-20, but they allowed a lot of yards. Now they face an Army team that's averaging 418 total yards in their last 2 games this year. By the way, Cincinnati has lost 15 of his last 16 games versus ranked opponents. That's right. This is 2 top 25 teams going head-to-head. Give me Army in the plus 14. Let's hit up the SEC one more time. Kentucky plus 7.5 at Auburn. They have their senior quarterback, Terry Wilson, back under center. He missed the final 11 games last year. He had a knee injury, but back when he was a full-time starter, he was averaging 67.2% on his completion for his passes. Auburn lost their top 2 defensive linemen from last year, Dwayne Brown, Marlon Davidson, both drafted in the NFL draft. And they're missing 2 of their offensive line starters. You might have heard of them. Prince Tenga Winagu and Jack Driscoll. They're both on the Eagles. They're not at Auburn. Give me Kentucky plus 7.5. One more pick for you. I got for you Alabama minus 28 on the road at Missouri. That number sounds like a lot. But I didn't fail you last year when I told you to go Oklahoma on the big spread against UCLA, and it's a similar reason here. Missouri defensive lineman Chris Daniels and their best wide receiver Maurice Massey each opted out of this season. On top of that, Missouri will be missing 7 players due to positive COVID-19 testing. Missouri hasn't even announced their starting quarterback yet. Yeah, how great is that? Their top contender for that job, Taylor Powell, the redshirt junior, he decided to transfer. So who knows who the quarterback is? They're missing a huge chunk of their team. Meanwhile, Alabama has 4 guys who are going to be drafted in the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft. Receivers Devonta Freeman and Jalen Waddle. And then don't forget quarterback Patrick Surtain and the monster Dylan Moses. Give me Alabama on the revenge tour. It's Nick Saban. He's leading those guys in to destroy Missouri. Let's take the -28. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Those are my college football picks. I gave you a little UFC pick as well. See how we do. 14-7 so far in the year. Football Friday, 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Game Night being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you. Visit them online at gmslaw.com. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. You want to get in before the end of the show. Coming up next, NFL insider Mike Clay from ESPN joins us next. His analysis of the Eagles and NFL Week 3 right here on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. More football talk here on Football Friday. Talked about college football the last segment. Now we got to get back to the NFL. Of course, we got a triple header of NFL action this Sunday. Eagles versus Bengals at 1 p.m. Then we got Cowboys versus Seahawks following the Eagles game. Then Sunday Night Football, Packers versus Saints. To get into all of that and more right now, joining me on the Boardwalk on the hotline, he is Mike Clay, NFL insider. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Mike Clay NFL. Mike, how you doing this Friday?
I'm doing pretty well. Looking forward to another week of football. I'm hoping we could dodge some injuries this week. You know, last week Sunday was really depressing, you know, to see so many guys going down with season-ending injuries. It was brutal. So hopefully we're past that bug and we have a good week of football here.
Yeah, kind of keep your fingers and hope for the best at this point. And speaking of hoping for the best, before we get to anything else, I got to get your perspective on this Eagles team because they're 0-2. In my opinion, I felt that Carson Wentz has looked stubborn at times. Jim Schwartz blamed himself for the game plan for the Rams' loss. So what is your perspective on this Eagles team at 0-2?
Disappointment, right? Now, look, first of all, I thought they would take a step back this year, right? I thought that they would get the last wild card, the new wild card, if you will, in the NFC. I did think on paper Dallas would show a little bit better this season. They just seemed like they were just a step ahead after the Eagles' offseason losses. But I still expected them to contend for the division and be one of the better teams in the NFC. So just being that, you know, especially losing week 1 to Washington, a game they were up 17-0. They looked like they were coming out in cruise control. And just we're going to roll over them, and then to fall apart like that. And then, you know, they hung in there with the Rams, who seemed to be a pretty good team for a while, kind of came back in that game. But overall, just a poor offensive display. I mean, Carson Wentz, he's thrown 7 interceptions each of the past 3 seasons exactly. He has 4 already. I mean, obviously, things are a mess here. But you know what I'd really like to see is, aside of health, obviously, that's been a big reason for their struggles, is finding something at wide receiver. I mean, look, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but teams don't roll out 2 tight ends every play. And the Eagles are doing that with Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz on 90% of their snaps. You just can't operate a functional passing game in the NFL that way. And you could say, well, look, they're both very good. And that's true. But look, Rob Gronkowski in his prime, we're talking peak Rob Gronkowski in New England. When he lined up at perimeter wide receiver, he was average. He was an average player. He was, you know, these guys can't go up against corners and expect to produce at high levels over a long period of time. So they need development from these speed guys. I don't know if it's going to be a John Hightower or Quez Watkins at some point, or Sega Whiteside makes a leap, whatever it is. But they have to find some playmakers at that position, or it's just I just don't know if the offense will ever really reach its potential.
You know, you and I talked a couple months ago about how Doug Peterson targets the tight ends a lot. And it seems like right now in the league, the tight end is important, but most of those teams are not using two tight ends in their offense. So, we know that a guy like a Greg Ward could be a slot receiver. We know Deshaun Jackson is a deep threat. Do you think the Eagles have the weapons on the roster without Rager and Alshon Jeffrey this Sunday to actually use their receivers more?
Well, they should, based on the capital they've put into that position, right? But no, you're right. I mean, look, there's a reason they're relying on those guys. I get that. I do. But that's what I'm saying. They need one of these young guys or two of these guys, maybe three of these young guys to come on, kind of make a leap and be productive. But look, the problem is there for many, many years, and especially me, doing a lot of fantasy football coverage, you always see, well, okay, this team has two good tight ends, so they're going to, they're just going to have both of those guys in the field a lot. Or you hear it about the running back position. Well, they have two good running backs, so they'll just go with a lot of two running back sets and put one guy in the slot. Teams don't do that. Play callers don't really do that. You see it a little bit, sure, but there's a reason why 72% of the time that teams have 3+ receivers on the field when throwing the ball. Why? Because even, an average receiver is probably going to be better than a good tight end at running routes and getting separation, which is the most important component for a wide receiver other than actually being able to catch the football. There's a reason for that, So, and those guys have that ability. They've been playing wide receiver for a long time. They were recruited that way. They were drafted that way. And that's where they work out. They practice against corners and second running backs and which, again, we saw the Eagles do that down the stretch last season with Boston Scott and Miles Sanders. And second tight ends, it doesn't really allow you to maximize your pass offense. So, right now they're in a sticky situation. They kind of have to, but hopefully Alshon Jeffrey comes back healthy for them. Deshaun Jackson can hold up. Obviously, we saw him played a bit of an expanded role last week. He's actually third in the NFL in air yards. I don't think people realize that. So they have been trying to get him the football. You like to see that, but they really need one of these younger guys like an Arcega-Whiteside to make a leap forward so they can use that 11 package and have these guys on the field.
Mike Clay joining us here on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN, on Twitter at Mike Clay NFL. Make sure you get ESPN Plus, get all of his great work behind the plus wall. Listen, it's only a couple of bucks a month, or you can do the bundle like I do and just go Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus, and you have a good time. Mike, the three quarterbacks from the 2016 draft, I'm really curious your thoughts on this. A lot of people have been talking about now after these first couple of weeks, where is Prescott, Goff, and Wentz now in their fifth season?
Yeah, it's funny because it changes all the time, right? I don't know if we're ever going to – we may not ever get an answer. It might be when one of them gets inducted to the Hall of Fame someday. Hopefully, as someone who grew up in the Pennsylvania area and grew up in Eagles fans, obviously you know who I'm hoping that is. But, man, it fluctuates constantly. Right now, I think you have to go with Dak Prescott, just the way he's come out strong this season and what he did last year. He's been tremendous. Objectively speaking, he has been the best of that bunch over the entire course of his career. Whereas Carson Wentz, his best has probably been better than anybody, but he's been inconsistent and dealt with injury. So I would say Prescott, then Wentz, and then I would go third with Jared Goff. I think he's benefited in a big way from Sean McVay, who is a legitimate star coach. I mean, I know that, Philly fans like to be a little hard on him and it's not his fault, but it's because of the comparisons to Doug Peterson. And, a lot of people have rated McVay ahead of Peterson. Fine. You can have that argument all you want, but that's not McVay's fault, right? He's still done a great job. Even last year, which most people agree was a very disappointing season for them. They went 9-7, right? They still almost made the playoffs. And it was a very, very poor season for them, relatively speaking. So, they're back this year. They look good, and it's obviously Jared Goff has benefited from that offense. So that's the order I would say right now. But ask me again in a month, and who knows? Maybe Wentz is back atop that list.
That's true. Things seem to ebb and flow constantly with this league. You mentioned the situation with the Rams and last year and this year. One could argue that the NFC West may be the best division in the NFL. What is your perspective on a division that could arguably have three teams come out of it? Because it's not just the play of the quarterbacks. It feels like all four of those teams have talent, even with the 49ers having about 100 injuries.
Yeah, you know what? It seemed kind of crazy in the offseason to suggest that the 49ers could be the team that goes from first to last, because that, we always talk about which team's going to go from last to first. There's always a team that goes from first to last as well. And I thought it was kind of crazy to suggest the 49ers, but right now it seems like a strong possibility. Obviously, Seattle's playing at a very high level. The Rams, as mentioned, have bounced back. The Cardinals look good. They already beat the 49ers, and they look very good. We'll see if that defense and offensive line hold up, but Kyler Murray looks good. So, they have three teams certainly that could reach 10 wins. And the 49ers, maybe not. Honestly, I would not be surprised if they lose this weekend at the Giants. Remember, they're not the same team. They're overwhelmed with injuries right now. They're up to they're down to their backup quarterback. They're their third string running back at this point. They're missing their top wide receiver. They're missing their top tight end, George Kittle. The defense is missing two of its best. Well, we'll say two of its best players. Richard Sherman's out as well as Nick Bosa. I mean, this is not the same team that played last year. Right now, on paper, they're probably a below average team, and it's a tough challenge, obviously, going in traveling to New York. So right now, I think they're probably the fourth team in that division, which is crazy to say, but you're right. That is a very strong division top to bottom, and had the 49ers been in the NFC East, maybe, they have a better shot to make the playoffs. But right now, it's not looking so good.
Mike, one more before I let you go, and I appreciate your time today. Again, follow me on Twitter at Mike Clay NFL. The AFC, the two best teams are playing on Monday Night Football. It's Chiefs and Ravens in the AFC. But who's the third best team in the AFC?
Ooh, that is a good question. How about the Steelers? I mean, I'll stick with it. I had the Steelers third on that list coming into the season. I think that they're a contender for against Baltimore. I'd like to see the offense kind of pick it up a little bit from what we've seen the first 2 weeks, but they're still 2-0. The defense on paper is arguably best in the NFL. Honestly, the top competition is probably Baltimore right there in their division, but the D's loaded. The offense should just get better and better as these young players come along and as Big Ben gets back in the groove after missing all but a game last season. So I'll give the nod to the Steelers, but I'll tell you what, there's more contenders than I expected. Tennessee's looking good. Buffalo and New England are, that's going to be an awesome battle. It's too bad they don't play until week 8 because I'm excited to see those two go at it. So, and obviously the Raiders 2-0 as well. So it's going to be fun to watch that AFC play out. But to answer your question, I'm going to go with the Steelers for now.
He's Mike Clay. Go grab that ESPN Plus subscription. Check out all of his work on side of the Plus wall. It's not a lot of money. You can get that bundle if you want to, like I did, but ESPN Plus, much, much worth it. That's where you get all Mike Clay's work and his all guests. He appeared today on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Mike, always appreciate the time. Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Game Night being brought to you by Matt Black Kia. Matt Black Kia wants to get you approved today. Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Wrapping up the show here. Before we get out of here, I promised you an Eagles pick before the end of the show. Eagles pick for Sunday. I think the Eagles win. I think they figure it out. I just believe too much in this coaching staff. I believe that you don't win a Super Bowl by accident, not with the way this team has done it. I think Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz are good enough coaches to get this figured out. I think this game is won in the trenches thanks to the defense. I think Burrow is able to put up some points and some yards, but it's not going to be anywhere like last week. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles. I gotta give a score here. Give me Philadelphia Eagles. I see this game being close, but the Eagles pulling away. Let's go 30-20. 30-20 Eagles. Coming up tonight on 97.3 ESPN, Heat versus Celtics. Do the Heat go to the NBA Finals? I kind of hope so. Find out tonight at 8 o'clock.